All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. My name is Jennifer Morse. I'm a product evangelist here at MadCap Software. And again, I want to welcome everyone to this overview presentation. For the next hour, we're going to be talking about the new features in MadCap Flare 2016 R2 and provide an overview of MadCap Central, which is our new cloud-based offering. So we're very excited to be talking about that. We have a lot to cover today, so I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. There are a few housekeeping things before we do. There is a questions area in this GoToWebinar panel. I would encourage you all to use that questions area if you have anything that you want to ask. I'm going to do my best to get through the material, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end to address those questions. I do have some folks behind the scenes helping me too, so as questions come up, please feel free to ask. If you're not hearing me or seeing my screen okay, give us the hi sign there, and we'll do our best to help you. This webinar will be recorded, as always, so if for whatever reason you need to pop out and you can't stay till the end, not to worry. We will send you a recording as soon as we're done and it's rendered. And whatever questions we don't get to today, we'll compile a question and answer document and send it out to everybody who's registered. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. Hopefully you can all hear and see me okay. If you can't, please give us the hi sign. Just a quick overview of today's agenda. I'm going to be talking about Flare 2016 R2, some of the new features we've added, including the pinning of images, build events, of course, its integration with MadCap Central. Also going to be going into the overview of MadCap Central. We're going to talk about content project management, hosting, build automation, task tracking, user permissions, and hopefully more. And then we'll transfer over, and at the end, we'll get to any questions that we can. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put PowerPoint away, and we're going to jump right into Flare here. Okay, so one of the first things you'll notice when you open up Flare 2016 R2 is that name change of 2016 R2. It's not MadCap Flare 12 anymore. What we're doing here is we're moving more to an agile release cycle, which offers a lot of benefits to our users. So throughout the year, as certain fixes and features become available, we can release them as updates to the current version. So updates that we send will no longer just include fixes here and there. We're going to be adding features as well. So in the past, features have generally been saved for a major version release. With this new agile release cycle that we're doing, now we can make certain features available and get them out to you all much more quickly. So important to keep your maintenance current. When your maintenance is current, you're going to continue to receive all of those updates and upgrades to the software, because again, they're going to include features as well. The first thing I want to talk about is a feature we added. It's called pinning images. And what this does is it makes your images easily and quickly accessible for future use. So, oftentimes one's image library can grow quite quickly, and you may find yourself using certain images over and over again. So this is just an easy way to access them. So for example here, maybe I want to insert an image, and there's many different ways where we can insert an image, but I can go ahead and I'll grab one here. Maybe I'll grab FAQ. So I'll click from my image list and I'll go ahead and drag it over to the editor, and there it is. If we go up to the XML toolbar here, there's this insert image. This is another way we can insert an image. But we have this other option here, this little pull down, and we'll see, if I can make it stick, that all of the recent images that I've used in this project are listed here. So anytime you add a new image or drag an image into a topic, it's going to show up in this recently used image list. But the thing is this recently used image list can only hold so many images. So if you find yourself using certain images over and over, maybe it's this FAQs one and maybe it's this basic steps one, anytime you need to come in here and grab that image again, it's quickly accessible here right from this recently pinned image. So again, just a way to increase usability a little bit. And if you have a very large image library, it can save a little bit of time from pulling up your image list and kind of rooting around for that image that you need. So quickly, usability improvement there. The next thing I want to talk about is the internal text editor. So now we have the ability in our internal text editor to manage fonts. So I'm going to go ahead and expose that internal editor here by clicking on this button on on the far right-hand side. So I have this split screen view. My eyeballs happen to love this, and it's something many of you all have requested as well. What we can do now is increase or decrease the font size when we're looking at this editor. So if this feels a little bit small to you, you can come up here to this guy and we can increase the font size to something a bit more comfortable. We can also reduce it down if we want, and then also set it back to factory settings. So something that you all have been asking for some time, so we were excited to add that in. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about in Flare are previous and next buttons. So this is something that we're adding now to our top navigation output. We had this available in our HTML try pane, but many of you requested this as well. Now we can add previous and next buttons in our top navigation output as well. So let me pull up an example here to show you what I'm talking about. Here I am in the Flare help system. This is our top navigation HTML5's help system. And you'll notice here we've got these two toolbar buttons where we can navigate to the previous and also the next topic. You may want to include previous and next buttons in your output for a number of reasons. They can be really helpful if you're presenting topics that are sequential, such as a tutorial or maybe a long process spanning many, many topics. Your readers can use these buttons to progress through the content in more of a sequential fashion. So here I'm in this getting started topic, which is sort of presenting a tutorial here, so multiple things that I have to do. If I want to, I can move through these things in a sequential fashion using these previous and next buttons. And what we'll want to do, if we come back into Flare, it's very easy to do. I'm going to pull up my skin. So you'll want to, the way you're going to want to do this is you're going to open up your, let me get this guy cleaned up here. In your topic toolbar skin component, there's a setup tab here, and you'll have the option to choose these two buttons. So here they are. So I'll add my next topic and my previous topic button. So now these are going to be added right at the top because I told Flare to do so in my topic toolbar skin. Another quick tip is you're going to want to make sure that the master page that you use for all of your topics that's holding your topic toolbar is actually there as well. So here I've opened up the master page that I'm using for my project. You can see I have a topic toolbar proxy, which is just a placeholder for all the topic toolbars that I'm choosing in my skin. So make sure you've got that guy in there as well. And once we've got these added, when we build, those previous and next buttons will show up in that where that proxy area is. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about are pre- and post-build processes for targets. So I'm going to go into my target here. Oh, I've got one open, so I'll go ahead and come over here. So here I'm in my target for my project, and there's a new tab down here called Build Events. So why did we add this feature? Well, we have a lot of customers, when they build output, for various reasons, maybe they want to manipulate files before they can use them. Or maybe before output is even compiled, the files within Flare need to be manipulated slightly. So again, in our targets file, we've got this new tab here called Build Events. And this lets us run command line events before or after a target is generated. So it's a handy feature for those of you who like to do things a bit more programmatically. You may want to run a post-process command that copies the files from our output folder after the target is generated to some other location. Another possibility, maybe you need to run a process that removes some MadCap-specific tags from all of your HTML output. Instead of performing those tasks manually after you build the target, we can automate the steps and include the appropriate post-build commands right here in the target editor. So for those of you who like to script like this makes it a little bit easier to manage these scripts on a target-by-target basis. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is how Flare 2016 R2 integrates with MadCap Central and segue into the features and benefits of MadCap Central. I just want to put Flare away for just a moment. I'm going to bring up PowerPoint one more time. Get rid of this guy. So what is MadCap Central and why did we build it? So before I jump into it, I just want to kind of provide a little bit of context here of what we're talking about. MadCap Central is a cloud-based platform that lets you plan, track, manage certain processes, content, and all the teams that are really at the heart of your organization and responsible for producing documentation. For years, users and potential users have been letting us know about problems they've been running into with their documentation, workflow challenges, technological challenges, and so on. And we know that not all of these problems are things that Flare can solve on its own. So I'll give you some examples. So maybe you're a Flare user. Okay, it's fairly simple to build your outputs. You go to your target file, you click a button that says build, and then you have your output file, right? It's not very difficult to do that. But then what? We need to get this beautiful HTML5 output file recreated, for example, and get it online. A lot of users find that process a bit scary. They may not have resources internally to get a staging and a web server set up quickly. Again, maybe you need a source control solution or a better source control solution than what you already have. Maybe you don't like what you're using. And the thought of getting help from your IT department or the dev team seems a little bit daunting. There may be an instance too where you need to publish content from Flare, and you do have it on a server, and you spot a really big problem with your output. Maybe you got a bunch of content in there that shouldn't be in there, or a bunch of typos that somebody didn't edit. It can sometimes be a little bit of a pain to go back, rebuild, and go through all the steps that you need to do in order to republish to all the staging and then all the production servers that you've got set up. Another thing we hear often is that it can be challenging to keep track of what needs to be done in order to get our documentation completed, and also keep track of what hasn't been done. I mean, we've seen users keep really detailed spreadsheets, many different apps to keep track of everything. It's not always easy to keep track of the things we have to do when it comes time to manage the documentation process. So we thought, well, how can we help better manage this workflow for our users? And of course, the list goes on. So I want to stress that with this first release of MadCap Central, we haven't solved every issue to the nth degree yet. But the features we're going to talk about today are really the start, and they do help a lot of users. So our yellow brick road isn't done being built yet, but we've laid these foundational bricks, and that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, I'm going to put PowerPoint away now and come back to Flare here. All right, so while MadCap Central is especially useful for Flare users, even non-Flare users are going to be able to take advantage of MadCap Central and some of its features, and we're going to touch a little bit on that later when we walk through it. But right now, I'm going to start from the point of view from the Flare author. So in 2016 R2, if we come up to this view button here, there's a new little icon in our ribbon, which is MadCap Central. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And this new pane comes up. And when we invoke this pane in Flare, what we're going to do is we're going to establish a connection of this local Flare project here. So I've got this, sample Flare project here. This is just local to my machine. Isn't living anywhere else but here on my C drive. And what we're doing, we're pulling up this pane so that we can establish a connection from our local Flare project here on our desktop to a clone on MadCap Central in the cloud. So establishing a connection between our local Flare project and Central is just really one aspect of Central, really. So as a Flare author, why would we want to do this? So some of you may be saying, well, that seems like a lot of extra work. Well, for one, when we establish this connection, of course, we can take advantage of Central as an integrated source control tool. Maybe you don't have a source control tool or a source control workflow in place. Maybe you want one, and the thought of getting one set up seems a little bit daunting. Maybe you need to enlist the help of your IT team or dev to get set up, as I mentioned earlier. Maybe you don't even have those kinds of resources available to help you. Or maybe you don't even like the source control solution that you're currently using. And maybe as a lone writer, you've never used source control because you think, hey, I'm just one person. I'm good. I don't need that kind of stuff. Well, if you're a team of one, source control can offer a lot of benefits, one being that you have a really easy and safe way to back up all of your source content. I mean, if something really catastrophic happens to your hard drive, you always have a backup that you can easily recover. And if you're part of a team, well, then source control is vital, not only for all the great backup reasons, but when multiple authors are writing to the same project, it's easy to ensure all of our content is in sync. And I don't have time today to go into all of the benefits and show sort of details of how source control works. That's an entire webinar in and of itself. In fact, we've got a great webinar on that very subject, which is available to review, and we can provide a link to that if anybody's interested. So getting our project into Central, another reason why we want to do this, it makes it easy for other players on our team to get involved. These players can be other Flare authors, or perhaps non-Flare users who are part of the overall documentation process. Another reason why we would want to sync our projects into Central, and I touched on this a few minutes ago when I had the PowerPoint slide up, again, maybe you need a really easy way to make your content available to your users without having to get IT involved and get additional departments to help set up a staging and production servers to serve up all of our finished content. So again, MadCap Central is a subscription to a cloud-based platform, and before you can actually log into Central from Flare here, which is what we're going to do, we're going to need to be able to log into Central from a browser. So you can be invited to log into Central from the person who initially subscribed to Central from our website, and you'll receive an email that will let you log in from a browser to create a username and password in order to access the Central license where you're all going to be participating. Or if you're the one who actually signed up, then you're going to be able to create a username and password from the email you receive, and then subsequently invite other users, other team members to participate in Central, and we're going to do that. So once you've done that, you've created a username and password to log into Central, then you can use that same username and password to log into Central from Flare. So I'll go ahead and do that now. It's actually saved in my email address, so I'll put in my password here. And now we're logged in. So what I'm going to do, when we log in, we get access to a few more buttons here, and I want to go through some of these quickly. So the first thing we want to do is if we've got a local project here, in order to take advantage of Central, we need to actually connect our project and get it up there into the cloud. So this same project here, it's local to my machine, but with this button, if I hover over it, I can upload this project to MadCap Central. So we'll go ahead and click that button. The next thing, we're going to get this dialog where I can actually select the MadCap Central license. Most of you, now I'm kind of part of a couple testing licenses here, so you can see there were 2 here in my list. Generally speaking, you're going to have just 1 license here. So I'll select my MadCap Central license. By default, it's going to take the name of the project that we created. So you can see it's December 15th Central Demo. We can enter a project description here if we want to. And now we're going to click OK. And the bind process window will start. It's telling us that it's binding the project. And in a few seconds, we'll get a message here that we've got some success. So we'll click OK. And we get a little bit of information here. So in just a couple seconds, you can see how I took this project that was local, and now it's bound to our Central licenses up in the cloud. So now we can start using it as an integrated source control tool as well. Again, it gives us a lot of benefits. So for one, a copy of our project that was once now local is now residing securely in the cloud via MadCap Central. So now we can keep the local and the cloud versions of our project synchronized using Central's integrated source control. Again, we didn't have to wait on IT, we didn't have to wait on dev or anybody. With one click, we were able to take our project and bind it to Central. So now we can start taking advantage of all the benefits that source control has to offer. Again, once we're bound, other Flare users on your team who are part of the Central license will be able to import this project down locally so they can start contributing and developing content. And again, another benefit when our project is up there in Central, and we'll take a look at this, is you'll be able to easily schedule builds and keep any of your builds for staging or archival purposes if you want. And then, of course, if you want, use it to host your output, making you that much more self-reliant in the whole publishing process. Again, no need to get your IT team, if you even have one, to help you. You don't have to worry about getting a staging or a production server set up. It takes care of it for you. And we'll take a closer look at that when we go over to Central. So keep in mind, Central's not a replacement for Flare as your authoring environment. We can continue to do all of our authoring in Flare, and then when we're done authoring, we can sync our files to Central using the integrated source control ribbon available. So for example, I come here to my What's New topic, for example. Maybe I got to get rid of these 2 features for whatever reason. They're not going to be in there. So I deleted my content. I do what I need to do. Maybe I type here is feature 5. So at the end of the day, let's say when I'm done, again, when we bind our project to Central, we're going to have the source control ribbon show up for us now. So now we can continue to edit and author and push all of our changes up to the repository. So I'm done writing for the day. I'm going to do a push. And yes, we're going to do. Now what we can do is we get this dialog when we do a push. If we want to, we can add a comment. Removed feature 5 and 6, whatever it is that makes sense. And these are the files that we're going to commit. And we're done. So we'll get a little progress, and now the files that we worked on locally are now pushed and synced up in the cloud. All right, so a couple other buttons here I want to talk about. The unbind project from Central. If we no longer need our project bound to Central for whatever reason, we can remove its binding. Removing the binding from the project doesn't necessarily remove it from Central. It simply removes the link between Central as a repository and the project. So our project will still be available here locally, but we will no longer be able to upload or push any changes from our local project to Central and use that as a source control solution. Okay, so the other button, the other important button here on this panel is the Import a Project from MadCap Central button. This goes to what I mentioned earlier in terms of getting other Flare authors access to your Flare project so that they can contribute an author to the project using Flare. Or maybe, you know, the reverse. Maybe you need access to another Flare project that somebody else has uploaded so that you can start writing and contributing to it. So if another Flare user uploads a Flare project to the Central license and you don't yet have access to it in Flare, you can get it from this button. You'll have to be associated with the project in Central, and again, we'll talk about that, but this makes it really easy to do so. So I'll click this button, and it's going to make a quick connection to Central. It's going to ask us to choose the license. Again, most likely you're just going to have the one. And this drop-down list is going to show us all of the projects that are up there in the cloud that we're associated with, that we can actually download and start writing to. So I'll go ahead and grab one here. Why don't I go ahead and grab this guy? So we'll click OK. And it's going to ask me to pull the latest file. So yes, I want to pull the latest version. And all files are up to date. So here we go. So we can see here we've just downloaded this project. It was Module 1 Help. And now we can start authoring and doing everything that we need to do in this project. And then when we're done, just like before, we can make our changes and then push them back up to the cloud when we're done, just making our edits. And then we're going to use this integrated source control ribbon to push all of our changes up there. Okay, so last but not least, we'll go back to this MadCap Central pane. If you don't already have Flare open, or excuse me, Central open in a browser, you can launch it right here from Flare. So this is going to invoke a browser, and Central is going to open. And so I've already done that, so let me pull him up. I'm going to just minimize Flare and put him away for a minute. So when we first log into Central, this is the screen that we see. We come to this home dashboard, and it's empty. It's a place where when we first log in, we're going to be able to populate this dashboard with widgets, which are little information objects, and we'll be able to see at a glance little bits of information that we find helpful. There are actually two areas in Central where we can work with widgets, the home dashboard here, and in the project area, which we're going to take a look at in a bit. So each user of Central is going to be able to customize their dashboard with widgets that we find helpful. So I'm going to come back to this screen because we're going to want to do a little bit of work in Central first to make better use of this area. So once we actually do some work and build some things, this area is going to make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to review the features and benefits of the functional areas that we see here. So we're going to talk about users. We're going to add some users to our license, and we're going to talk a little bit about permissions and controls in terms of what people are allowed to do. We're going to go through teams and how we can organize our users on our license into teams if we want. Tasks, we're going to take a look at how tasks can help us manage workflows and processes. And then in projects and builds, we're going to be able to see all of our uploaded Flare projects in the Central license, associate users with them, and actually manage some of the builds and the output. And then finally, we're going to make our way back home and talk a little bit more about these informational widgets and the problems that those solve. All right, so let's talk about users and permissions first. So I'm going to click on this here. If we want other team members to log into Central and be able to use it, they're going to need to be a user in the Central license. So if you're the person who initially subscribed to Central, this is where you can invite your colleagues to join in. So at first, this list will be empty. Now, I've been playing around in here, obviously, and I've added some users that you can see. But when you first log in, if you're the person who signed up, you're not going to see anybody here. The person who initially subscribed to Central has user administration rights. And a person with this permission can do a few things, such as invite other users to join in Central and change the permissions of a person that's actually logged in. If you see a little blue crown next to the person's picture or their avatar here, that means that user has user administration rights. And since I have that permission, I can add some users. And it's very easy to do so. We click the little Add User button, and we can add their first and last name. So I'll add Julia here. Okay, so here's Julia added, and at the same time when we add her, we can actually set the permissions for this person. So if maybe this person's a Flare author, they're going to need permissions in order to upload new projects, import projects, push changes to the server. Maybe we want to give them minimal, depending on what level of writer this person is, maybe we want to give them limited permissions in building things, so we can choose what we want. What's nice about these permissions is when we hover over them, we get a little bit of a tooltip, so we get a little bit of information about what each permission does. So it's a good thing to kind of check out as you're setting permissions from folks or looking at this screen, what every permission does. I don't have time to go through all of them, but this is where we can control, well, do we want this user to be able to run builds, or are they just a Flare user? We just want them to author content in Flare and push and pull changes from the repository. So you have some choices here. So I might add users one at a time. So we'll go ahead and send this invitation. So we've given her permissions, and we've sent the invitation. And then we can see that Julia now is added, a whole other row. So we might add users one at a time. Maybe some users have different permissions than others. And you can see Julia's added here. We can see a little bit about them. We can see she's invited. She's not quite active yet. Obviously, she's not online. But when someone is active in the system, if they've been invited and they've actually created their username and password and have been able to authenticate, you'll see this status change here from invited to active. We can see when they last signed in and when they last signed out. And we do have some options up here. We can click this columns button here, and we can customize the screen. There may be some bits of information that you may find helpful, so you can customize what you see here. I can also invite users in bulk, which is handy if all of the users you're inviting have the same permissions. So again, multiple users can be invited individually, and we can set their permissions, but maybe you have a group of QA engineers that are not Flare users, and they only need to help with build management and maybe reviewing your output. So what we can do is when we click the little Add User button, there's an option down here for bulk add users. And all you need to do is we'll click this, and it's going to tell us, all we have to do is browse to a CSV file. A CSV file is just a comma delimited, like Excel file. It's really easy. In fact, I have one here so you can see what it looks like. Here's an Excel file, okay, and your Excel file should have 3 columns, and each column should have this title. So we should have email, we should have first name and last name, and all you need to do is populate the Excel file with the appropriate email addresses, their first and last name, and then you'll do File, Save As, and then there's an option in Excel to save it as a .csv, and put it somewhere where you have access to it, and that's all you need to do. We'll keep that open. We'll just minimize him. So we'll browse to the file, and here he is, we'll upload it. And we can set the permissions at the same time, so maybe these are folks that all have to have the same permissions. It just saves us a little bit of time from doing it manually. We'll click Upload File, and then we'll get, I'm not going to do it because we're a little bit short on time here. When we upload file, we'll be able to send the invitation, and just like we saw Julia here, added as a row, you're going to see all of those names in that CSV file populated here in this list. So just a quick way to get multiple folks in there at one time. When we hover over each user, you're going to see a card, which is a quick way to take action or communicate with that person. Or perhaps if you've got the right permissions, like user admin, you can elevate or change one's permission. So if I hover over Mike Hamilton here, we see a little information card pop up. I can quickly send him a message. I can assign Mike a task. I can see his activity. And because I have the user admin privileges, I can set his permission. So maybe I need to elevate his status a little bit. So maybe, Mike's been promoted from QA. Maybe he's an actual Flare user now. So I want to give him more control over his Flare projects. I want him to be using Flare and be able to upload changes that he makes to Central. We can set permissions for a user on all of the projects that are uploaded to Central, or we can pick and choose certain projects that this person is associated with. So we can even control the permissions for a user on a per project basis, or give them permissions across all of the projects. So I'll go ahead and click Save and Finish there. Your own profile. If you look up here on the upper right-hand side, you'll see your own name. And if we click on it, a couple things I want to point out. If we pull up the settings here, you can round out your profile here if you want. You can change your picture. By default, if you don't do anything, it's just going to put your first and the initials of your name here. You can change it and use a real picture, a funny picture, whatever you want to do. Notifications. This is also a really important thing to think about. Anytime something happens in MadCap Central, you can choose to be notified. Now, everybody's going to have a different idea of what's useful. You can pick and choose when something happens in Central, when you're notified. You can also choose how you receive those notifications. There is a notifications center in Central. It's this little bell. So it's kind of grayed out right here. When I hit cancel, it'll be more clear. But anytime one of these things happens, it's checked, I'm going to get a little notification up here in this bell. I can also choose if I want to have an email sent. I can do one or the other, or I can have both, whatever you prefer. So that's a handy thing to pay attention to when you first log into Central, is decide what's important to you when something happens and how do I want to be notified. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is Teams. So the Teams page can be used to organize users that are part of our central license into groups. So this provides a convenient way to associate people with projects and quickly communicate with a specific set of users. So here you can see I've got a team already. I called it the A team. And like users, I can hover over it and I get this handy little information card that lets me see a little bit about it. I can see, of course, just by looking at it, I can see who's on the A team. I can see the projects that are associated with this particular team, who created it. Because I've got the right permissions, if I click on this card here, I can actually edit the profile of this team. So if I want, I can add a description here if I wanted to. I can add projects to this team. I can add additional users. So maybe we need to add Mike Hamilton to this team here. And when I click Save and Finish, it will update. And why would we want to group users together like this? Well, why do we care? Well, suppose you're a team lead, or maybe you're a QA lead, and you want to let everybody know on the team that, hey, we're ready to do a build on this project, and you want everyone to push their changes into Central so that the repository is up to date. So what you can do is hover over this card and send them a message. So I'm going to go ahead and click Send Message. So here's one dialogue going between the team, but maybe I can say, hi guys. Friendly reminder to do a push. We are building this afternoon, or whatever it is. I don't have good spelling. So when I click reply, oh, I'm sorry, I click send. Oh, there he shows up. Okay. So now everybody on this team got a message, and when they receive the message in their notification center or in their email, they can go ahead and let me know when all their changes are done, and then I can go ahead and do a build. We wanted to make this really flexible. Again, let me close this guy. We wanted to make this flexible to handle different company sizes. I mean, if you're a part of a really small team, maybe you're only 1 or 2 people, you may only have one team listed here, and that's fine, and have all of your users associated with that team. But maybe you're part of a much larger team with users distributed across many different functional areas. Maybe you're going to have a much longer list of teams here, which is fine too. So different users can be grouped together, all working on different projects. So again, it's scalable. Very easy to add a team. Click the plus button, and maybe I can call it the B team. I think I did that already, so it saved my typing. I can choose what projects are associated with the B team, maybe all of them, and I can choose, all of these users here are associated with this team. And then he'll show up here on my list, so there he is. So very easy to add a new team. All right, let's move on to tasks here. So when we click on the tasks icon here on the left-hand side, this task page opens. So this task page lets us keep track of what needs to be completed and helps us visualize workflow a little bit. It's really easy to create a task. Again, common theme, when we need to do something new, we click the little plus button from the toolbar, and I'm going to create a new task. We have to give the task a title, so maybe I'll say review skin on KB project, something like this. We can give a description, made a new skin, let me know what you think. We can select a project for this task, an associate one, so maybe it's my really cool knowledge base. We can create a start date. So when do I want this task to begin? Well, maybe I want it to start tomorrow, and I want the review done by Monday. And I estimate that it's going to take just an hour to look through everything. Right now, the task is assigned to me, but I want to actually assign it to somebody else. So I can click this button here. And I'm going to go ahead and assign this to, maybe I'll assign it to Rob Hollinger. I want him to check out this information. So when I click Save and Finish, I can create my task. And it's actually going to show up here on my task board. The task board is just one way to see our tasks. It's similar to a Kanban board. So when we create a new task, as we saw, it adds it here into the to-do column. Tasks can be in a couple different states. We have to-do, we have in progress, we have tasks that can be completed. We can also archive and backlog tasks, and I'll touch on that in just a sec. As a task progresses, though, it can be moved. So for example, before I talk about moving tasks, I want to talk a little bit about this view here. We can customize this task board. You know, there's a lot of tasks in the to-do list, and they're for lots of different users. We can change and filter these tasks by various things, and we can use these toolbars to do so. So maybe I just want to filter and only see tasks that are associated with a particular project. Maybe I want to filter and only show tasks by a certain due date. Maybe I only want to see tasks for a certain user, filter by priority. If you've got any filters set up, if you need to clear them all, you can click this button. Another handy thing is this guy here. If you just want to come in and see only the tasks assigned to you, if you click that, then you can toggle between all of the tasks across the board or just the ones that are assigned to me. So for example, here's some of the tasks that I've been assigned. So here's a high-profile one. We'll take a look. And here the task is, it's asking me, Justin, assign this to me, QA, check all of the CSH calls, and do whatever I need to do. Here's my comment. All looks good, so suppose this is real. I can hit save. Now we've got a dialogue going, and he gets notified that I've actually done something on the task. He can see the dialogue that I've got going on, and I can click close. I can move this task into any state that I want, a couple different ways. I can right-click on the task, and I can move it to in progress or complete if I wanted to, or I can simply click on it and I can drag it over. So maybe this guy, I'm assuming, is going to be complete. So lots of different ways to move tasks from one state to another. And again, right-clicking and setting the state, clicking and dragging, whatever you find useful. Over here is the calendar view. So it's an alternate view of our tasks, or a way to see our tasks in more of a calendarized fashion. So some of you are a little bit more visual and like to look at things this way, or look at things in more of a chronological way. If you're setting tasks for folks, maybe you're the team lead, and you're setting a lot of tasks for your writers, and then you can kind of see how tasks are balanced out among the team. We can kind of see how weeks and months are stacking up. So if we click on one of these down here, it highlights it up here in the calendar. Again, and we can filter these things any way we want. We can filter by project, by user, by priority, or if you just want to take a look at the tasks that are assigned to you individually, you can filter and just look at those. So it's a nice way to see how things are stacking up and what's coming up due. Archive. So I want to talk, let me go back to the task board here. I want to talk a little bit about the archive status. This is an area where we can move completed tasks off our visual board here. Now, some people, when I've done this in the past, or I was presenting this in the past, a lot of questions came up. Well, what's the difference between completed and archived? Let's think of a release cycle. So right now, we're working on a certain set of tasks for Flare 2016 R2, let's say, just as an example. We've completed a bunch of things. And so imagine this completed column here with a lot of different tasks as we're getting towards the end. Maybe for some reason, one of the UI images changes, or a splash screen image changes. Something needs to change that we once thought was complete. So a task that was once completed may need to move back into the in progress for whatever reason. So we can quickly do what we need to do and move it to whatever status we want. Archive, however, I think of it like a storage unit, or all of those papers on your desk that you need to move to a banker's box and put them up in the attic somewhere. We're done looking at them. You want them off your desk. But you still may need to refer back to them at one point. Maybe you need to reference a conversation you had about a task, or see the dialogue going back and forth, or maybe you need to check out an attachment that was set on one of those tasks. So when we're on Flare 2017 example, we can take all of these tasks that were in the completed, and maybe we can move them into archive. So maybe I'll move this guy off. And when we click on this archive button, again, this is like that storage unit. This is like that banker's box. We still have access to these things. They're off our sort of active board and active tasks in terms of what we're working on right now. Backlog tasks, the idea here, we'll go back to the board here. The idea here is maybe one of these tasks on our board, maybe it's something that needs to be backburnered for whatever reason. In other words, maybe you have a task that you need to revisit in the future. You can set the status of it to backlog so that you can refer back to it later. So maybe I'll do, I think I have a low priority one here. Let me look at mine. So maybe this one, for example, for whatever reason I need to move it off. I'm going to backlog this guy. Essentially, you're putting a pin in it. You're going to come back to it at a later time. So I always have access to those tasks that I've backlogged and maybe want to come back to it at a later date. Okay, so now I want to move on to the next functional area here in Central, which is projects and build management. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this projects button here. So the project page displays a grid which shows all of the MadCap Flare projects that we've uploaded to our central license. Again, these are the copies of the local Flare projects that were once located on the Flare users' desktops that are now cloned up here in the cloud. Here's that one that I took locally and bounded earlier. There he is listed right there. As I mentioned earlier, one of the benefits of binding our Flare projects to Central is we want to make it easy to build and host our outputs. Essentially build, stage, serve up our content to our end users without having to involve an IT department. Many of you don't have those resources readily available. Another benefit that I mentioned earlier, again, is that the local Flare projects that we're working on and the clone files on Central can be used as an integrated source control solution. Again, we're not relying on any other department to get us going. So if we're a team of one or a team of many, so source control does give us a lot of benefits, which we touched on. So here's our project list. Again, there's that one that I just added. We can see the teams that are associated with this project, the users that are associated with this project. We can see a little bit more. Is the project active? When was the project last built? When was it last set to live? Just like many of the other screens, we can customize the columns that we want to take a look at. Some of this data may be important to some of you, so you can customize what you see here. All right, so I'm going to drill into one of these here. So I'm going to click, let me just do module 1. We'll take a look at him. When we click on a project, we come to our second dashboard area. Remember when we first logged in, we came to the home dashboard where it was sort of blank and it prompted us to add widgets. The projects area, every time you click on a project, each project has its own dashboard, and it's the first thing you come to. And it tells us this is a dashboard, this is the project I clicked on. I'm going to leave this blank for now, and I'm going to come back to it a little bit when we talk a little bit about widgets. But I'm going to drill into this target a little bit, and we're going to take a look over here on the right-hand side. We have some options. Project dashboard is one. This is the screen we're on here. But we also want to take a look here at build management. So when we click on build management, we're going to come to all of the targets that are in this particular project. We only have, in this example, I only have one target here. I mean, obviously, in reality, probably you have more than one target file listed in your project. And if you're a Flare user, hopefully this looks familiar. This actually replicates the target folder structure that you have in your Flare project. So it's the same view that you're looking at if you were looking at it in Flare, replicated up here in Central. So if you're associated with the project and you have the right permissions, you can open this build management button and view the project here. And then from here we can do various things. For example, we can build right here in Central. So if I click on this target, you can see I've done the build a few times here. We can build a few different ways. We can right-click, and I'll go ahead and start a new build. So I'll just click Build. We could have also selected the target and clicked this little button here, which is Build. So you can see this is going. We can also use a scheduling feature. There's a button up here in the toolbar, and when we hover, it tells us we can schedule a build for this particular target. So maybe we want to build this thing, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1:30 a.m. in the morning. So it's very easy to do so. But whatever method we choose, whether we're building manually or we're scheduling it, we first want to select the target. So Maybe, for example, we want to schedule this. Here, my build's done. I'll go ahead and click this button here. And we can choose. Now, this is a 24-hour clock. So this is where we'll say, okay, I want this to build at, 1:30. Where's my 30? Down here. 1:30 in the morning. We'll check our time zone. And I'm in Pacific time. And I want it to build every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we save and finish. So we can still build this target manually. But when we look at it here, it's kind of hard to see in the contrast here, but there's this little icon. If we hover, we can see that we've got a schedule here for this particular target. If we want to remove the schedule for whatever reason, all we have to do is click the schedule button again and remove the schedule. So now we're back to manually building. So you can do both, whatever you prefer. When a build is complete, you'll see when we started the build, a new row was added. And when the build is complete, we can see a little bit of information about the build, including how long it took, the status, who did it, the build progress, so some handy information. Again, same thing, we have some column options where we can show and hide some data that we find important, so you can customize that. When targets are built, we can view them right here. So I'll go ahead and click this one, for example. So I built this one earlier. I'm going to go ahead and click this View button. And a new tab is going to open, and it's going to actually give us a preview of what we just built. So here's my help project. I can see what it looks like. I can check it out. So again, maybe non-Flare users on your team need to check out what you're doing and give you some feedback. Another member who's been invited to Central can log in and just check out your build. You don't need to publish anything. Nothing that we're seeing here is live for the outside world, but your team members, if they can log into Central, and they're associated with this project, then they can come check out what you're doing and see what it looks like and give you feedback. If we have the right permissions, though, and the particular permission I'm talking about here, it's called Manage Builds Permissions, we can do a little bit more. We can actually take one of these builds. Again, nobody outside of your company can see this, but we can actually take one of these builds and keep it if we want to. And we can right-click and we can set a build to keep. So we're kind of parking this one. We checked it out. It looks good. We want to keep it staged. It's got this little checkmark box here, which is telling me it's kept. Nobody can see it. We're just sort of parking it and staging it. If we want to set something to live so that our customers can see it, again, we can come to a build and we can set it to live, and that's this little button here. And you have to have the right permissions to do this. So when we click Build Live, we get this little globe. So now we know it's live. And we're also assigned a vanity URL. Down here, some information changed. I'm not sure if you noticed that. We get a vanity URL for this license. And again, we can click on this link and it's going to show up. It's the same information. Now it's just public. Everybody can access this information. I didn't have to get it published to a production server anywhere. I was able to just set it live myself. The world can't see anything until we set something to live. So unless something has this little glow button, it's protected from the outside. Nobody will be able to access it. So another thing that came up when I did this in this demo in the past, suppose you've always published your output to another location, some other domain like help.myproject.com. Maybe you want to keep using that since your audience knows and loves that particular link. Maybe they've bookmarked that site. What you can do is write a simple redirect script so that when your users go to that URL, they'll be redirected to this new URL created in Central, which is this vanity URL here. I'll click on this live build. So we're automatically assigned this vanity URL. So using Central to manage our builds can be really beneficial. Again, it removes the building process from our local machine. You have the power of the server to make this very quick and very tidy and very neat. We mentioned earlier, you can schedule the build process for targets to happen whenever we want automatically. We don't need to get a build server set up. We don't need to buy an extra license to run on that build server. We don't need to write a batch file, or use the command line or have to know how to write a batch file or understand the command line interface to make that happen programmatically. You can be much more self-reliant to automate that process. We can retain builds that we want to keep. So this works a little bit differently. When we're building in Flare, every time we do a build of a target in Flare, that previous build is flushed. You can see here that all of these builds are still here. These are all the previous builds I did of this particular target. And having a build to revert back to, and also a build that we can keep easily, is really handy. Maybe you go live with something. Here's our live site. Something's awry. Maybe a bunch of content that went live that shouldn't be there. What we can do is if we can log into Central and we have the permissions, I can just come back and say, you know what, we got a problem, we got to fix it, but I know this one's good, so I'm going to go ahead and revert back. I'll click this live button. And what Central does is it takes the one that we know is good, switches it, it keeps this guy. Again, nobody can see this because it doesn't have the globe. This one, which we know is good, this one's live. The URL didn't change, so nobody's going to get a 404 error. Now we can easily go back into Flare, fix what we need to fix, and then choose to make this one live again if we want to. So much easier to do. Makes us much more self-reliant. So if you want to use it as a staging area, perhaps host the content elsewhere. A build can always be downloaded. You don't have to set something to live if you don't want to. We had feedback early on where some folks said, you know, this looks really great and we love the ease of everything, but you know, for some of our outputs, we need to host and manage those on our own. We have to use the internal systems that our IT gives us. We need to adhere to other internal archival policies. So anytime you do a build, you can always download it. And what this is going to do, it's going to download the output files in a handy little zip file that you can take and then publish to your own server. So you're not, you know, forced to host anything here. We can still take advantage of the ease of the build and the scheduling and the staging area if we want. We don't have to set anything to live for the world to see if we don't want. I want to touch on one button here, which is the delete builds. And again, you have to have the right permissions in order to do this, but this little broom is really handy. You can delete builds that aren't needed. You know, when we do this in Flare, again, every time you build, that previous build is flushed. In Central, that's not the case. So, you know, at the end of the development cycle, you may end up with a lot of builds or a lot of stuff that you don't need. If you don't need these old builds anymore, you can delete them, and it frees up a lot of space on Central to do other things. So we can delete things, all of the targets. We can delete all the builds in this particular target. We can delete all the builds in the project. So maybe you've got multiple, you know, targets here. I'm just in this one. If we delete all the builds in the selected target, it's going to delete all of these builds that aren't set to keep or live. Or if we had multiple targets in this project listed here, if we selected this guy, it would delete all the non-kept and all the builds that aren't set to live. So it's just a way to clean things up and make it easy rather than having to delete these builds one by one, which you can do if you want to. And the last place I want to talk about here on the projects area, we're looking at the time here and we're running out, is repository. So the repository, again, is just a read-only view of our local projects that are bound to Central, because again, we're using Central to act as our source control repository here. It's a read-only view, but we can view a history of the commits here. For example, if I want to take a look at what's going on, I can see everything that's happening. So I can see when I bound the project. I can take a look at just my commits, the commits across all of the different authors. It's just a real quick view on the history. I mean, you can do this in Flare. If you've got a Flare, if you're a Flare author, you're going to have that source control ribbon. You'll be able to see a history of all these things. But if you're not a Flare author, maybe you're a manager and you're not authoring in Flare, it's one handy way to come in and see a read-only view of the commits and kind of a historical view of what's going on. Okay, so I want to make our way back to home here and start talking about these widgets in the next few minutes. So we've made our way back. This is where we can start to customize our home dashboard. So this dashboard lets us get information at a glance with these little widgets. So when we first log into Central, as I mentioned, it's going to be blank. And then, of course, every project has its own dashboard. So they're initially empty. What we can do is if we want to add these little widgets or these little information objects, we click this button. And this is where we can choose the widgets that we want to add. Each user can customize his or her own dashboard to meet individual preferences and work habits. So this at-a-glance data that widgets provide can help make us more productive, which is why we built them. So for example, why would I care about these things? Well, maybe I'm not the only person on the Central license. Maybe I'm one of 15 users. Maybe between all 15 users, there's 30 projects that are going on between us, but I only care about 5 of those projects. What I can do is I can come here and I can add this project bookmarks widget and click add. And initially it's going to be empty, and I'm going to go ahead and we can resize any of these widgets as well. But maybe I want to populate this with just the projects that I care about. So I can click the little gears, and maybe this is, these are the only 2 projects. I said 5, but we'll go with 2. Maybe these are the only 2 projects I care about. So when I come to my home dashboard, I have quick access to these 2 projects that I'm in all the time. It saves me from having to go here, select the project, and search for it among a list of 30. I have quick access to the 2 that I go often. So maybe I want to resize this. Another helpful widget is the storage and usage. So let me pull up my widgets guy here. So let's say you're the person who initially subscribed to Central, and you're in charge of handling, doling out all the seats to the team members. Maybe you're responsible for managing the storage. So you want to know how many seats you bought, what you have left. Maybe you're hiring someone, and you want to see if you have a seat available or if you need to add another user. Or maybe you just want to be able to check your storage and be sure you're not at the edge of anything. If this is important to you, well, then we have a widget for that. We've got this storage and usage widget. I'll go ahead and click Add. And I'll move this guy up here. So here we can see a bunch of information. We can see when our Central subscription expires, how many users are available, and how many invites have been taken. We can see our storage. We also have the ability, if we've got the right permissions, to renew the subscription, add more users, and add more storage if we want to. We can do it right here from the UI. You don't have to call MadCap and do it. You can manage it yourself. So we still would love to talk to you, though, so feel free to call anytime if you don't want to do it yourself. All right, another issue where widgets are helpful is suppose you're a lead, and maybe you've got 3 writers under you, and all of them have tasks that need to be taken care of, and you need to keep an eye on what's going on. We have a widget that lets us kind of keep track of all of these different tasks and everything that's going on. So what I can do here, I'll come back up, and I'm going to add the task calendar. Okay, so maybe I'm going to move him down here. So this task calendar, this is showing us all of the tasks across all of the users. If we click the little gear here, maybe we want to duplicate this guy. So maybe we want to take a look at just what's going on for a particular user. So here's everything, but again, we've got 3 writers, and we want to make sure everybody's on track. I can select a user if I want. So I want to keep track of Rob, make sure he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. And I can duplicate this for any of the users on my team. So again, at a real quick glance, let me refresh the page here. So this is a fun thing about using a beta. Some things are not quite baked in the oven yet, so sometimes we see little oddities. And just a reminder, when you're testing Central, it is still in beta, so you may see some little oddities here. So I'll go ahead and duplicate this one again. We'll try it one more time. And maybe we'll select Justin here. There we go. So now we can keep track, and I can duplicate this for all of my, all the writers under me if I want. It's just a really easy way to get quick access to the things that they're supposed to be doing and make sure things are on track. And again, same thing for the project. When we come into the project, I'll go ahead and come into this guy here. We can customize the dashboards. So if I want to take a look at all of the tasks, this isn't a good example because I don't think I have anything built. Let me go back and choose that module 1 where I know I've got some stuff built. When we add a widget for the project, what's nice is that it already filters itself for that particular project. So maybe I want to take a look at all of the live builds for this project. Maybe I want to take a look at the task calendar. When I click Add, it's going to filter itself. Save me a little bit of time. It's assuming I want to see all the live builds for this particular project, and it'll show me a list of everything that's live for this particular project. But again, you can customize this. Everybody's going to have a different idea of what's useful here. Okay, we're running out of time, so I want to kind of wrap it up here and see what I can get to by way of questions. Let me go back to the PowerPoint real quick. Let me minimize this. So a couple reminders, as an attendee, you get $100 off some training classes coming up. We have a basic to intermediate training coming up at the beginning of January. If you're a new user, this is a wonderful class to sign up for to learn best practices. And then if you want to take your CSS skills to the next level at the end of the month, we have another CSS training class. So for signing up, you get $100 off your registration. So contact us here at sales@madcapsoftware.com or email your rep and we can answer any questions there. The next reminder, our conference is coming up in April. When you register by January 31st, you can save up to $500. So check out the link there. It's madcapsoftware.com/events/madworld, and you can see the entire presenter list, amazing panel of speakers, a fantastic venue. If you don't live in Southern California, it's a wonderful place to come in April and escape a white winter. All right, so let me take a quick gander over here at some of these questions. I'm just going to keep this open for just a minute because we are running out of time. And let me just answer a few, and I'll ask you all to stay on with me for just a minute or so. Let me take a look here. Okay, so let me review. So here's a good question. How does pricing work for Central? So for those of you still on, so Central is a subscription-based license, and you pay for it's priced per user and for storage. So some of the pricing hasn't quite been ironed out yet, and when we release, well, of course, we'll have all that available. But some of the numbers that I've been told, it's going to be anywhere between $80 and $100 a month per user. And among all of the users who are signed up for the license, you're going to have a gig of storage. So you'll be able to add additional users if you need to. If you reach that storage limit and you want to add more, you'll be able to purchase additional gigs of storage, just like I showed. Let me go back to Central here. I'll go back to my dashboard. So an easy way to get to it is right here. I can add additional storage if I want to. So you'll be able to do this right from within Central if you've got the right permission. So those are sort of the numbers that I've been told. Probably an introductory pricing will be available early January, probably at the lower end of that. Right now it is a free and open beta. You can subscribe to Central. Again, you have to have Flare 2016 R2 in order to test, but I'd encourage you to do so if you haven't already signed up. There's no limit to how many users you can invite to your Central license right now while it's in beta, and there's no storage limit. So encourage you to kind of tinker around, give us some feedback. Again, it is a beta, so there's some oddities you may run into, but let us know, because this is why we are opening it up to all of you. We'd love to get your feedback. Also would love to get feedback on features that you don't quite see. We have a huge list of ideas that we want to accomplish in this, but you know, we can't think of everything, so we would love to hear from you all and understand what would be useful for you. Okay, let me take a look. I think I'll just take time for maybe one other question here. Let's see, all of these. So one question is, what is the URL? What does the URL in Central look like? mycompany.madcapcentral.com. Let me go back to one here, and I'll show you. So the vanity URL is assigned. Let me go back to build management, and I'll quickly show you. I know I had one that was set to live. So this one's set to live. I'm going to come down here. So I'm going to direct your eyes down here to the bottom. This is the URL that we've been given. There are portions of this that can be changed. In fact, there's a great topic in the help system about this. I didn't mention this, but from the help here, I'm going to go ahead and launch it right from the application. There's some great information in here. I didn't go through all of the widgets. In fact, I meant to do this. If we go to the features here, before I get to the vanity URL, I would just encourage you all to take a look at this help topic. We built a great movie on all of the widgets that are available on Central and what they all do, because I don't have time to go through them all. But if you want to read more about what they do and how they function, you can go here. The vanity URL, I'll pull it up here. There is a great help topic in here that talks about, here we go, changing the vanity URL. There's a lot of information about what you can and can't do, but where you're going to actually do it is if you come up here to Central and in the settings, and we come up here to server, here's where we can change parts of it. So there are some things we can edit, which is that prefix area. So if you want to read more about that or test that out, I'd encourage you to read up on that help topic. But the answer to the question is parts of it you can change, which is that prefix. But if you have an old URL that you're using, as I mentioned, you can create a quick redirect script to take everybody to this new URL. Okay, so I want to be mindful of everybody's time. We've got some great questions that have come in, and some of them have been answered behind the scenes. You can't see them all, but what we're going to do is we're going to compile a question and answer list behind or after the demo, and we'll send it out to everybody. So I just want to thank you again for coming. I encourage you all to get Flare 2016 R2 installed. It's the current version of Flare. If you haven't already signed up for Central, you can do so. In fact, I have this up here. Where did it go? When you come to our page, you can come to free trials and you can come to MadCap Central. So if you're the first person, if you're going to be the admin for everything, come to this page, fill out your information. The company field, this is going to be the name of your license. So if you put in MadCap Software and click sign up, the name of your license that you're going to choose it's going to say MadCap Software right up here. So this is going to say MadCap Software. And then once you hit request beta, you'll receive an email that will allow you to create a username and password. And once you're in, you'll come to this home dashboard screen again. Nothing will be populated, but you'll then have the opportunity to come in here and invite users to participate. So the other users that you're working with on your team don't need to keep signing up on our website. One person should sign up, and then you can subsequently invite other users to join. All right, so again, thanks everybody for joining. We would love to continue to get your feedback. Please feel free to sign up, test it out. Let me pull up PowerPoint here. I'll throw my email address up. So thanks again. If anybody has any questions about what you saw today, you need any clarification, if I muddied the waters anywhere, drop me an email. I'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to get your feedback. So thanks again for joining. Hope you'll have a wonderful rest of the week, and hope to see you again on another webinar. Thanks so much.